Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. My name is Carla Morales. I am the Vice President of the Arizona Technology Council here in Southern Arizona. For those of you that are joining us that are not familiar with us, the Tech Council is a statewide trade association focused on technology-based companies. We do public policy advocacy on behalf of the industry. So we're busy during this time of year. We were busy, very busy this time of year during the session. Pre-COVID, we did about 160 events a year. During this last few years, 2019 and 2020, we did about 85 events, and we're just picking up and going into our in-person event session. We have a number of publications. We negotiate lower cost products and services for our members, and we offer health insurance and 401k programs. And shortly, we will have many more new opportunities for our members. The newest one that we've had a press release about was our partnership with UA Global, where now all of our members and their families are able to attend UA Global online schooling at a 30% tuition reduction, which is fantastic. For more information about that, visit the resource tab on our website. I'd like to welcome you today to today's virtual Tech Talk series. Today's event is how water-dependent tech industries plan to thrive in Arizona. We have a fantastic panel. Before we go on, I'd like to remind everyone to please mute your microphones and turn off your cameras. We want to make sure that the focus and spotlight is on our panelists and our moderator. For today's event, all questions can be put in the chat area, and the moderator will compile the questions and pull from there. Furthermore, we would like to inform you that there are currently sponsorships available for future series events and all future Arizona Technology Council events. For more information about that, please again visit our website at aztechcouncil.org, or be sure to email either Jamie or myself for more information, and our contact information will be shared with you all in the chat area. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's moderator, Juliet McKenna. Juliet is a hydrogeologist with Montgomery & Associates, which is an international water resource consulting firm headquartered here in Tucson. A founding member of the company's water resource planning group, her work focuses on groundwater management and water policy for public agencies, water providers, tribal nations, and non-governmental organizations. She is a registered professional geologist in Arizona and California. Juliet, thank you so much for being here with us this morning. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Carla. Good morning and welcome, everybody. It's my pleasure to introduce today's panelists. Each panelist is going to give a brief introduction to their organization's water management strategy and perspectives on technology, water efficiency, and conservation initiatives. Then we will have moderated questions with the panelists, followed by Q&A from the audience. So throughout this hour, please type any questions you have in the chat and name the panelist if you have a preference for who answers it. We're going to begin with Brad Burles. He's the general manager of Palo Verde Water Resources for Arizona Public Service Company. APS is Arizona's largest electric company, and his responsibilities include executing water strategies at Palo Verde Nuclear Generating Station, the nation's largest producer of clean air energy. Brad has a U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission senior reactor operator license and degrees in nuclear engineering and engineering management. Secondly, we have Kelly Osborne, an industrial waste engineer and water champion for Intel Corporation's Ocotillo site in Chandler. Kelly's focus is to help reach Intel's sustainability goals through site water management, how the Ocotillo site can reduce, reuse, and reclaim water. She works with both internal site disciplines as well as the city of Chandler to ensure maximum benefit to both Intel and the surrounding community. Kelly has a chemical engineering degree from the University of New Mexico. Third is Dave Sobek. He's an executive vice president at Carollo Engineers in Phoenix. He has more than 20 years of experience in the planning, design, and construction management of water and wastewater treatment facilities and infrastructure projects. Dave has led the design of over $3 billion in water and wastewater construction for public and private sector clients throughout the US, including multiple projects for the industrial and high-tech sector. Brad, would you please begin?
All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Juliet. Again, Brad Burles, I am the General Manager of Palo Verde Water Resources at the Palo Verde Nuclear Generating Station. Just a little background on Palo Verde here, so you have a better understanding of who we are, in case you're not familiar with us. We are a 3-unit nuclear facility about 40 miles west of Phoenix. And as Juliet mentioned, we are the single largest source of clean air energy in the nation. And we do provide about 70% of Arizona's clean air energy. We have 7 owners, so we're a little unique in that aspect, that represent owners in Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, and California, with Arizona Public Service, APS, being the largest and the owner operator. Within Arizona, less than 3% of the state's water budget is used for power generation. I don't know if everybody knew that or not. With Arizona accounting for for Palo Verde accounting for just over 70% of the APS fleet water consumption annually. So at Palo Verde, we use about 70,000 acre feet of reclaimed water annually for our plant cooling purposes. So that's about 45,000 gallons a minute on average, along with just under 2,000 acre feet of groundwater annually for systems that require higher quality water, like our demineralized water, fire protection, and our domestic drinking water systems. Our cooling water is primarily provided by the City of Phoenix's 91st Avenue wastewater treatment plant, along with a smaller supply from the City of Toloson's wastewater treatment plant. It comes to us from about 36.5 miles of underground piping. We have a pumping station in between the cities and the facility. And we further treat the water here at Palo Verde using a 6-train and 2-stage clarifier system to bring us to acceptable water quality. Our primary chemicals constituent removed through that process are calcium, magnesium, and silica. Those are the things that kind of cause us our biggest challenges from a chemical perspective. With chlorides and TDS being the things that are in the water, the lower quality things in our water that we actually do not remove, and that impact our number of cycles of concentration in our cooling towers. Between now and 2026, we're expecting our water supply costs to increase by about 70%, and at which point in 2026 we go to a tiered pricing structure such that we'll get to where we're charged more for every acre foot that we use. So a real driver for us in trying to reduce our overall water usage. Over the last decade, we focused on the efficient operations of the facility to increase our cycles of concentration. So that kind of minimizes how much water we blow down from our cooling towers. Plant was originally designed for 15 cycles of concentration. We're running about 25 cycles annually on average right now. We're also currently exploring opportunities to augment our existing cooling towers with dry cooling technologies. We're doing some research and development. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. That could help us to reduce how much water we lose to the environment through our cooling process. For APS, we have reduced our non-renewable water usage in 2020 by 14% from our 2014 baseline. This has been done by retiring some of our older water-intensive units and replacing them with new units that employ more water-friendly technologies. We shifted loads from our water-heavy intensive power plants, again, to some of the more efficient power plants. And we also use zero liquid discharge systems at our West Phoenix and our Red Hawk facilities to minimize our water usage. We've also expanded reliance on renewable generation across the state that requires little to no water usage. So thanks for having me today. I'm looking forward to the discussions and the questions. Back to you, Juliet.
Thank you very much, Brad. Kelly.
Thanks, Juliet. First, just a big thank you for the invitation to talk to you all about water conservation today. Intel is very passionate about conserving water, protecting our environment, and really being a good neighbor to our communities that surround us. Intel's goal is to achieve net positive water use by 2030. In 2020, the Ocotillo site where I work withdrew 4.6 billion gallons of water. Over nearly 25% of that was reclaimed water versus fresh water. The site then discharged 4.1 billion gallons of water back to the City of Chandler water reclamation facilities to be reused and recharged within the community. Through our water management strategies and our water project investments, Intel Arizona was able to conserve 2 billion gallons of water, and we were able to return 95% of our freshwater use. So we're making progress towards that 2030 goal, but still working towards that 100%. The largest initiatives that we have that support our water management strategies are the on-site water treatment plant that we have at the Ocotillo site and the Ocotillo brine reduction facility, which is a partnership between Intel and the city of Chandler. The Ocotillo site water treatment and recovery plant, which we call OC Water for short, can treat up to 9.1 million gallons a day of the industrial wastewater coming from our factories. The plant utilizes biological nutrient removal, followed by a membrane bioreactor to reduce the total nitrogen and chemical oxygen demand in the wastewater. This water is then sent for ion exchange, decarbonation, and reverse osmosis unit operations to generate really high quality water that we can then use across our campus to offset other water demands so that we're not having to pull fresh water. The brine reject from that reverse osmosis process is then sent to a thermal treatment plant, which involves a brine concentrator, crystallizer, centrifuge to produce a salt cake, so that that salt isn't then going back to the water or being discharged to the city water reclamation facilities. The Ocotillo brine reduction facility, which is the partnership that we have with the city of Chandler, can treat up to 2.8 million gallons a day. And that is the first pass reject from the reverse osmosis systems at the Intel site for our ultra pure water. That facility uses cold lime softening, followed by ion exchange and reverse osmosis again to produce that really high quality water, which then gets sent back to Intel, again, to offset the potable water demands. We recover about 95% from the OBRF and 96% from our OC water. So all of that reduces how much water we have to withdraw from freshwater sources. Intel is also involved in many water project investments throughout Arizona. We work with partners like Trout Unlimited and the Nature Conservancy. And through these projects, last year we were able to restore over 600 million gallons of water to support Arizona's water resources. Some examples of those projects are we invested in building stone structures to facilitate the collection of rainwater for groundwater recharge in the Tucson Basin. We're helping farmers to convert from flood to drip irrigation in the Verde Valley to conserve water in the Verde River. So it's projects like these that allow us to help conserve and restore water across the state. Again, Intel is working diligently to reduce and reuse as much water as possible. We want a very long and positive relationship with Arizona and the city of Chandler. We've provided some links to the moderators so that you can review our water policies and some of the water projects that we're investing in. And again, just thank you for the time and opportunity to talk more about this.
Great. Thank you very much, Kelly. Dave.
Those are two pretty tough acts to follow right there. So I want to add my thanks to everyone else's for allowing me to participate. This is something that I'm certainly very passionate about from a personal standpoint and a Corolla standpoint, but we play a little bit of a different role in the industry than maybe the owners of my kind of esteemed panel members here. So Corolla is a privately held environmental engineering consulting firm. We specialize in planning, design, construction, startup, and commissioning of anything related to water, wastewater, reclaimed water facilities, and infrastructure. We were actually founded here in the state in 1933, and we are the oldest and largest firm in the US that's dedicated exclusively to water. So unlike a lot of our peers, water is all we do. We're one of the few remaining kind of mid-sized firms in the sector. We've grown to about 1,200 employees, 49 offices throughout the US, and we've done just about 30,000 projects for public and private sector clients. And while we're a national firm, we really do still focus on our clients and kind of the regional community level. That's something that's still very much a core part of our business. So From a staffing standpoint, again, all focused on water. We're pretty much full service. We've got civil, process, structural, chemical, mechanical, environmental, EI&C, control engineers, as well as planners, financial analysts, architects, designers, construction managers. And then in addition to our traditional engineering services as it relates to kind of water and sustainability, we have an internal research group, which is really focused on applied research and supporting cost-effective, value-added engineering services. We've completed somewhere around 170 or so applied research projects that support things like new treatment technologies, improve operations practices, or just insights into major trends in water and wastewater, including 6 process patents. And some of that work has been done for various industrial clients, including some of the work that Kelly was just mentioning over at Intel. One of the more unique aspects of our capabilities relative to this type of work is our water arc treatability lab located in Boise. Very large lab space. It's really designed to provide a controlled environment to economically and efficiently respond to different bench and project testing requirements for projects. It includes bench testing equipment for conventional advanced processes, and it can be used kind of over a wide range of applications. So really, if it's related to water and wastewater that needs to be tested or piloted, we can do it there in a controlled environment. It also provides a lot of analytical capabilities for those projects or for our clients. And we also collaborate a lot with universities and contract labs and research laboratories as needed. Relative to kind of the conversation today, we also have a sustainability group with strategies that really assist our clients with corporate sustainability, risk management, and resilience planning, which is clearly becoming an increasingly important part of the sector. We do focus primarily on the planning, design, and CM side of projects. But we also bring the ability to turn key projects for our clients through various partnerships with other A&E firms and construction firms in the industry. You may be more specific to today. If you look back over our 90-year history, a majority of that time was really focused on municipal clients and projects. But about a decade ago, I think we recognized that our industrial clients, in particular high-tech clients, were facing a variety of financial and quality and regulatory challenges related to water and wastewater, and we're looking for innovative and bottom line friendly water and wastewater reuse solutions. So with that, we formed our private sector group, which we call our kind of PSG group. That's one of the groups in the company that I'm responsible for. And it's really focused on treatment, disposal, and reuse needs across all industrial sectors. So again, we've designed just about $3 billion worth of water-related projects, including in the high-tech sector, which for us is semiconductor and data center, manufacturing, food and beverage, oil and gas, power, mining, and textile. And we actually do a lot of work in the Native American sector as well under that group. In terms of the type of work we do to support those clients, high purity water systems, specialized wastewater treatment, advanced water treatment facilities, and brine management and handling, which here, as we all know in the state of Arizona, can be a significant challenge, including some of the largest, most high profile industrial treatment projects throughout the nation. So water recycling, a big piece of what we do as well, with the goal of minimizing overall water footprint, contributing to corporate sustainability goals, promoting environmental risk management, stewardship, resilience, and sustainability, all of which support the permitting and regulatory compliance and some of the water resource challenges that we all know we're facing here. So again, I appreciate everyone letting me be a part of this and looking forward to chatting throughout the next hour. Julia?
Great. Thank you very much, Dave. Just a reminder to our participants, please utilize the chat, type your questions in there. And if you want to address them to a specific panelist, note their name. And we will be monitoring that. And we have tagged the last part of this session for audience Q&A. So let's dive into water conservation in the industrial sector with this expertise here. And I'd like to begin with Brad and Kelly. What are your organization's goals for water sustainability and conservation? And you touched on those a little bit. So in answering this question, could you also talk about the challenges that you see to reach your goals? Brad, would you begin?
Yeah, so for APS, I'll start at APS level for us. We have a resource plan that looks out from 2020 out to 2035, as many companies do. And that's kind of we have our aspirational goals included in that. And one of those is to reduce our total fleet water consumption for power delivery by 41% between now and 2035. So that's one of our challenges, is going after that goal, knowing that we already use a fair amount of reclaimed water, but finding ways to increase that use of reclaimed water, but ultimately reducing how much water we use through either retiring older units or bringing on newer, improved water efficient units. We've also looking to reduce our fleet water intensity, so how many gallons it takes us to produce a megawatt hour, and trying to drive that number down by about 60% between 2020 and 2035. So a couple of pretty large goals for us there. And ultimately, we're also trying to reduce our groundwater consumption from 15% of our total fleet generation down to about 4%. So again, a pretty healthy reduction in that area. As far as the challenges, for us at Palo Verde, without really understanding the system real well, that I talked about 70,000 acre feet coming in, 45,000 gallons a minute on average. Right, most of that goes through our cooling towers, some of the best concentrators of poor quality water there are. And so we're having to make up for that. So the opportunities for us really exist in either water recovery from the back end of our process, where we blow down water to maintain our chemistry control, and finding potential ways to further recover that water back into the inlet of our treatment facility. Or it's finding ways to actually minimize how much water goes out of the cooling towers and into the environment. And one of the ways that we're looking at doing that is through the addition of dry cooling technologies that may allow us to reduce our temperatures. Because like in the wintertime, we go through about 40,000 gallons a minute to the environment. Summertime, it's about 60,000 gallons a minute. So if we can reduce that summertime temperature of our water down closer to the wintertime water temperatures, it'll allow us to save quite a bit of water ultimately. The challenges with most of these are costs. Some of it is technology driven, and especially here in Arizona in the dry heat, does make it somewhat challenging for us to put together technologies, especially in the dry cooling, that are effective and efficient for us. But that's one of the areas that we're really focusing on, and have a partnership right now with Sandia National Labs to do some research between this year and 2022 to hopefully identify an opportunity for dry cooling technologies that, if we can scale it properly, will be beneficial for us.
Thank you. I like how you turned the challenge question into an opportunity discussion. Kelly, how about at Intel?
Yeah, so, just a quick recap, Intel is trying to achieve net positive water use by 2030. A couple things that we're doing to work toward that goal. First, similar to what Brad just said, right? We're working on reducing the amount of water needed for the process through, recipe developments. We're also working with reuse opportunities. We're working with our vendors to develop tools that can reuse as much water internally as possible, or collect and reuse water with no treatment needed in between. So our vendors have been very good at partnering with us on that. We're also, similar to Brad, maximizing the reclaimed water that we use. We have our external reclaimed water that we get from the city of Chandler. We also are maximizing our internal reclaim through the 2 projects that I discussed in my introduction, right? Through the OC water plant and then the Ocotillo brine reduction facility plant to offset those water demands across the site. Some of the biggest challenges that we see with that is how do we incorporate these new technologies and new sources of internal reclaimed water that we've got now without impacting the high standards, the high quality standards that we have for our products, right? The Ocotillo site is a high volume manufacturing site for our microprocessors. So each change that we make requires an abundant amount of testing and piloting to make sure that we're meeting all the very strict quality controls that we have in place. Because at a high volume manufacturing site like ours, it's very important that any changes that we make don't impact production. I mean, I'm sure everyone's heard of the microchip shortage that there is, especially like in the auto industry. So making sure we're not impacting production is definitely a big challenge to us to make sure that we're meeting those quality standards.
Good. Thank you. Dave, I want to ask you about partnerships. In your role working for industrial water users, are there advantages to privately financed solutions for water supply and waste treatment, especially when companies are looking to expand their production?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I think we're seeing more and more of that, especially recently. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. You've got Kelly and Brad and Intel and APS that are absolutely two of the more proactive and kind of forward-thinking industries out there when it comes to water reuse. But in general, if you go back a decade or so ago, water was kind of an afterthought, kind of a commodity item in a majority of the industrial processes out there. And so I think as you're seeing a renewed focus and an increased focus on whether it's from a water resources standpoint or a financial standpoint, I think you're seeing more of kind of an understanding of the need to maybe look to partner. I think the second reason is the magnitude of these projects and the associated challenges is very significant. Some of the numbers that Brad and Kelly are throwing around, I mean, they're very significant water resource needs, some very unique water and wastewater challenges. And in many cases, the management of those byproducts, whether that's the brine, what you get from the cooling operations, or even just the waste streams that could come off of the standardized treatment. And trying to solve those challenges, whether they're the regulatory challenges, the financial challenges, or even the operational challenges, as a single entity can be really difficult. And so I think that's why you're seeing kind of this partnership model. I think the third reason is, again, with the exception of probably Intel and APS and a few others, it's really not the core competency. Most folks are looking to pass that off to someone who may be an expert in water and wastewater. I think, again, APS and Intel have really dug in and are very, bring a lot of expertise to the table. I know in the case of Intel, they're actually operating a lot of these facilities. But for someone whose core competency is, making soft drinks or, oil and gas or other things, and that's their core competency, the idea of bringing on a partner who brings that expertise to the table to operate, or in some cases, to finance and keep that off the books, it's a very intriguing option. And when you look at some of the resources that are available, and I know Kelly will talk a little bit about their partnership with Chandler when it comes to that reclaimed water or the ability to continue to discharge certain waste streams, there can be a lot of win-win opportunities when you look at that public-private partnership model. So again, every situation is very unique, but as you look at these bigger challenges, I think bringing or looking at a public-private partnership as a way to address those in a manner that allows everyone to get a benefit out of the situation and doesn't overburden anybody with the challenges that these projects can bring is becoming a more palatable solution. And you've got a lot of folks out there that can bring these different benefits to the table. So we're seeing more and more of it. And I think we're going to continue to see more of it as these industrial areas grow and these challenges become bigger.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point that there's various motivations for these partnerships. Kelly, can you tell us a little bit more about your motivation and the type of partnership you have with Chandler?
Yeah, again, Intel really strives to be a good neighbor in our communities. And so we've worked very hard to foster a good partnership with the city of Chandler. We have one facility that's already, being run, the Ocotillo Brine Reduction Facility. We've also entered into a partnership with the city of Chandler for a second facility, which will be beginning construction this year. The Ocotillo Brine Reduction Facility that's already being run and in place allows, obviously, the benefit to Intel of reclaiming water for internal reuse. So that offsets our potable water demands, but it also helps the city of Chandler reduce the TDS in the reclaimed water used in their communities. So they see a benefit for the reuse and recharge of that water as well. We're helping kind of clean up that reclaimed water source. Intel is almost a third of the reclaimed water source to the city of Chandler. So It's important for us to give them as high quality water as we can. Then the new facility that's going to begin construction this year is a reclaimed water interconnect facility. So that will treat about 10 million gallons a day of water up to A+ reclaim water quality levels. So that allows Intel an additional source of reclaimed water for use in our cooling towers, very similar to what Brad was talking about. And then it also provides the city with water to recharge within the city of Chandler to our aquifers here. So I think, you know, the benefits that we see on both sides, especially with reclaimed water, you know, much as Brad was saying, in the summer, the cooling loads are much higher. That's when our reclaimed water demands definitely increase. And then when we don't need as much of that water, it allows the city to recharge a very significant amount of water to the aquifer system here. So,
Juliet, if I could kind of piggyback on one of Kelly's comments there, I think that's an important aspect to the partnership as well, whether it's because the demands change or whether it's because certain industries have limitations on how much of that water they can reuse or where they can use it in their process. There is often a significant volume of that reclaimed water remaining. And after that treatment, as Kelly mentioned, it's a very high quality water that can provide a variety of benefits from a water resource standpoint, a direct reuse standpoint, or other options or alternatives that can really benefit both the public and the private entities. So I think that's another good reason why you're seeing a lot more of this partnership type of an approach to addressing these challenges.
Juliet, if I could, you know, we're in a little bit of a unique situation with our cooling towers and being the concentrators that they are. We have opportunities at Palo Verde to actually utilize take the brine potentially from the West Valley cities. So the cities they have the same water challenges that all of us have, and we'll have more as we continue to grow. And you know, each one of them are looking at tens of or maybe hundreds of millions of dollars in investments, and they're looking at their different opportunities and alternatives. And for us, we look to be, again, that same community partner that Kelly mentioned, and an opportunity to take that brine, put it through our system. And we have over 600 acres of evaporation ponds on site. And that's ultimately where we send our blow down to when we evaporate to the environment. But to build a new evaporation pond or the other facilities is quite expensive. So we're looking at opportunities to partner with our neighbors that we can help them out utilizing our existing infrastructure to minimize the impact on them and potentially minimize the financial impact on taxpayers in those cities also.
From a water planning perspective, it's interesting to hear this whole water cycle, water budget approach that if you can't use, water's too valuable to go unused. So you're reaching out to your community and your neighbors and others who have a use for something that you may not. Let's move on to technology. I know there's a lot of interest on this call about technology. And of course, Intel and APS are leaders in this field in Arizona and probably worldwide as well. Brad, you talked about your water costs escalating in 2026. How does this price increase affect APS's ability to invest in more expensive water technologies? And maybe describe those a little bit.
That's a very good question. Yeah, so I mean, the water costs I mentioned between now and 2026, we're looking at about a 70% increase in our water costs, and they'll continue to escalate after that. I mean, we're fortunate to have a fairly assured, and I know we'll talk a little bit about drought resistancy a little bit later, but a fairly drought resistant supply of reclaimed water. But ultimately, anything we can do to reduce that usage helps us also financially due to those large costs. So any opportunity that we have of reducing our water costs through, again, that dry cooling technology, through recovery of water, and part of it gets to using the right water for the right purposes. And it's a very slippery slope, I would say, and it's definitely a somewhat public relations balance that we have to maintain, that we are really, as a company, looking to reduce our groundwater usage and minimize that as a company. At the same time, we know if we can reduce how much reclaimed water we're taking and utilizing at Palo Verde, that affords the cities that are supplying water to 91st Avenue an opportunity to reuse that water elsewhere. So, by us reducing our water usage allows us to then help the cities in that manner and help us financially. The cost of the expenditures, we're being in a regulated state to where at least we currently have cost recovery and a lot of our capital investments. That still provides companies like APS and Tucson Electric opportunities to continue to develop our infrastructure and invest in new technologies where we can find them that will be beneficial for us. So cost is a challenge, right? And the cost of these new technologies, cost of existing technologies. I'm sure, Kelly, the dollar signs that Intel's invested I'm sure are huge. But it's part of what we have to do as the community business partners that we are, is to balance and be good partners with our environment, and whether that's water, whether that is minimizing our carbon footprint. Those are all things that we have to really put a lot of effort in and be willing to spend the money and invest in those things for the greater good of the communities.
Kelly, do you want to talk about some specific technologies that may have been game changers to reduce water use at Intel?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure Dave could go on and on about the technologies out at OC Water, and I can certainly let him speak about the technical side, but that has definitely been kind of the biggest technology game changer for Intel, right? Bringing on-site water treatment and recovery on-site to Intel has been a phenomenal change. I mean, it's definitely a new space for Intel, right? We've got a long history of making microprocessors. Water treatment is new to us. We're learning. Folks like Dave and Carollo have certainly helped us along the way. But yeah, that water treatment and the thermal processing for the brine treatment has been fantastic for us, right? It's been good for how we're able to internally reclaim water and reduce any impacts to our city water reclamation facilities. So I don't know if Dave wants to talk about any of the specific technical advances that they've come up with that kind of treatment, but.
Yeah, I can touch on a few things. I think, first and foremost, you both kind of hinted at it, that if you're looking at these opportunities as your traditional dollars per gallon cost of water type things, that's out the window when you look at doing this type of treatment. You have to kind of understand that the drivers here are far bigger than saying, well, I can get potable water for X or reclaim water for X. This is more about the sustainability and the long-term viability of the water resources and the business model as a whole. But I think one of the things that we always try to start with, and we've done this obviously with Intel and others, is looking at the water cycle holistically within the process, because understanding, as Brad said, kind of what water you have, how you need to treat that from an optimization standpoint is really important. So for instance, at Intel, these multiple treatment facilities are not by accident. They were identified and implemented to provide really specialized treatment for specialized streams and to produce a reclaimed water that can be used in a certain way, versus really not segregating those waste, taking it all as one big flow and trying to treat that in a way that would be far more expensive from both a capital and an operation standpoint. So understanding the system, where you can make changes internally to optimize that minimize how much you have to spend on the treatment side downstream is certainly step one, because in most cases, there are opportunities to do things, whether again, that's segregating waste or just maybe optimizing the way you're using the water, whether that's cooling or processing is kind of step one. I wish I could tell you there were some earth-shatteringly fantastic technological advances that were implemented. I think it was just a matter of taking the existing technologies, things like the HERO process, things like some of these thermal technologies, and really trying to optimize them as much as possible relative to, again, the water quality we were seeing and the water quality we wanted to produce. And when you look at the scale that folks like Intel and APS are doing this on, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars of shifts in one direction or another by simply optimizing what you're trying to achieve and understanding how you really benefit from and what water source you have and how you need to use it. So there are a lot of technological advancements that are out there and a lot of folks talking about things that you can do. A lot of what we've done so far has been more traditional, but the goal has been to take advantage of that technology and use it in the most appropriate way to minimize capital on O&M.
I'm going to jump to a question from our audience, which is on this topic, Dave. What is the panelists' interest in new water treatment technologies, and how easy or difficult is it to engage with new tech companies versus focusing on technologies that are already known and utilized?
A good question. The interest is, I would say, from all of us is there, right? If there's a way that we can do something better or cheaper, we're all interested in that. But the second piece of that question is the killer a lot of times, right? I know we piloted a few different technologies with Intel and with some of our textile clients that are very intriguing, but they've got to be proven and they've got to be things that we can make sure are going to do what we need them to do. Because as Kelly and Brad will tell you, there's not an option to shut down. You can't have even a warm down or significant financial consequences to the organization. And so it is a bit of a line that we walk. We want to be as efficient and we want to take advantage of new technologies, but there is an angst about implementing those if there's not a proven, probably more than one proven installation that shows that it's a resilient and a reliable process. So I don't know if Kelly or Brad, you want to comment on that as well.
Well, I was going to say maybe nuclear power and microchip processing aren't the fields in which to experiment with new technology. Kelly, did you have a comment?
Yeah, no, I agree with Dave. I think Intel is definitely keeping a pulse on what technologies are coming out and how we can utilize those. Again, we just have to be very careful about how we test and pilot these technologies to make sure that we're meeting those high quality specifications and we're not impacting our production facilities. But yeah, it's definitely something that we're keeping a pulse on and partnering with companies like Carollo to make sure that we are using the most tried and tested technologies as they reach some level of maturity. So.
And I would just say, Juliet, that even though yes, we are a nuclear power plant, once you get on the cooling side of the technology, it is similar to any other generation facility in most ways. And so, especially with 3 units and because of being a zero liquid discharge to the environment facility, and it's all going to our evaporation ponds, we do have the ability to take some water from that stream, put it through some type of trial, test pilot technology, and do testing there. So it's not something we have recently done, but it is something that we've talked about, discussed, and I think it's important for us to be open to helping the broader water community. And if somebody like Carollo has a new idea that they're coming in and wanting to test, I think part of our job is to help facilitate that testing to help develop those opportunities that others will take advantage of too.
Good. And I'll mention that our panelists have all agreed to provide their email addresses. So when you have a chance, do type those in the chat and welcome follow-up questions from any of our participants. I want to return to water resources. As presumably all of us know, Arizona is highly dependent on the Colorado River, and the first shortage has been declared starting January 1st, 2022. Could you discuss, let's start, Brad, with you. Will this shortage impact your operations? And looking down the line, what is APS doing to prepare for potential future water shortages?
Yeah, excellent question, and on probably the front of a lot of people's minds with the reductions in the Colorado River allocations due to Lake Mead levels this year. Fortunately for us in APS, the first definitely tier 1, tier 2, and I think even in tier 3, we really don't expect to have any impacts, direct impacts on us, and probably not any really indirect impacts either, due to, at least for Palo Verde, again, all of our water coming from the reclaimed water at 91st Avenue and a small amount from on-site groundwater. And the rest of our facilities also are pretty much self-sufficient in that area. But it is important for us to continue to minimize our water usage, and the technology changes as we retire some of our higher water intensity plants and transition either like we did with our Ocotillo plant to a very water friendly plant, or the continued expansion of solar and other renewables that are a lot more water friendly, at least in the direct generation aspect. Those things are all important for us. So as long as we're doing that, then if the drought continues and things get worse over years, we'll set ourselves up for to be successful. But again, for us, getting water from flushing toilets, doing laundry, all those things like that, and going through the treatment plant, those are some of the most drought resistant sources of water that there are. And so for Palo Verde, we're in very good shape. We'll currently licensed to 2045, 6, 7, and we have opportunities to go another 20 years beyond that potentially. So we see ourselves in a good position here for the foreseeable future.
And we keep hearing about reducing water use. There's a question from the audience about augmentation. So in the event that you need more water, let me just read these questions, and perhaps one of you could take them. Is there any plan for solar desalination of ocean water, piping it to Arizona from Mexico or California? Is it feasible? Will it ever be practical or necessary? And again, sort of in the augmentation side of things, how about what you see as an opportunity with stormwater or rainwater capture and reuse?
No one's jumping to take that one. I guess I'll start. Relative to the first question about desal coming from anywhere outside of the state, I certainly, anything's possible. I think as our water resources continue to be stretched, I think everything is on the table. I think we would all sort of acknowledge that. I think there are a lot of other opportunities we have here, whether that's low quality groundwater and doing some brine or TDS removal and brine management there, or just again optimization of what we have. I think you'll see some other focuses before we look to go in that direction. But long term, again, I think anything's possible depending on what the drought situation looks like. From an augmentation standpoint, you asked that previous question. I think the biggest question we're getting from industrial and high tech clients right now is about that long term water resource, and that's what's keeping folks up at night, and especially folks that aren't like Intel and APS who have done this planning and are really out in front of it. And so a lot of the work we're doing is really on the planning side to, again, go back into the process and understand where can you gain additional efficiencies? Where can you treat on site and reuse? How can you maximize the water resources that you have? Rinse 3 times if you're in the textile instead of 5 times, those types of things. And so there's a lot of focus on trying to take care of your own business before you look at bringing in other water resources. But it's easy to say you can go out and supplement and augment, but all of those things have a cost, and everyone is competing for those same water resources as well. So certainly things like stormwater capture, I know there's a lot of clients that are looking at that on site, including some high tech folks. But a lot of the focus, I think, right now is on trying to optimize internal processes, treat the waste that we do have, and then recycle that as efficiently as possible. That's kind of the near term, at least. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Dave on the, bringing water in from California or Mexico. Maybe one day that will be feasible. I would encourage folks to look at the water projects that Intel is investing in across the state. So that kind of goes to the rainwater runoff kind of solution. We are looking at how do we help across the state to really minimize how much water is having to be pulled out of the rivers, and how do we capture rainwater better to recharge to groundwater. So I think, I think it's 21 projects or something like that just in Arizona that Intel is investing in. So I think we have a link that we can provide for that. And I would encourage folks to take a look.
Good, thank you. I'm going to give you each a chance for sort of a closing thought. And if there's something that we haven't covered, please go ahead and discuss that. But perhaps to guide you, think about what advice would you give a company that is just getting started, either as a new business or just realizing that there's an initiative for conserving or reducing water use. And this would be from Arizona's perspective, maybe some of the pitfalls or some of the lessons learned or opportunities that you see. And I'll start with you, Brad, if that's all right.
Okay. So you talk about new companies, and obviously APS is not a new company. Palo Verde is not a new company either, but I kind of am new to water. And you mentioned my background, and I primarily have been on the nuclear side of things up until last November. So I've really been trying to take an approach of you listen to everybody, and you are open to all the ideas. Whoever calls you, being willing to talk, listen, and at least give the time to hear out those potential ideas and approach it from that kind of, we use the term here at APS, a growth mindset, right? You get out as your kind of your focused way of thinking and just being open to what you don't know. I mean, if we think about our technologies 10, 20 years ago and where they were and where we are now, and probably Intel is probably a great example of, right, how technology has evolved over time. I would expect to see that in water technology and water treatment technology as we go forward. So the public-private partnerships, right? The government right now is a huge source and likely is to become an even larger source of funding for research and development opportunities. And I think we just need to be open with our ears and our eyes to all those different options and embrace it and embrace change.
Thanks, Brad. Kelly.
Yeah, I agree with Brad. I mean, there's always room to learn, right? And I think for new companies starting out with their water conservation goals, one, I would challenge everything. For example, with Intel, the water that actually touches the wafers that we make has always kind of been a very scary area to go touch and mess with. One of the things that it took us a long time to challenge was how much water do these tools really need to use, and really going to segment how are the tools using water? Is it really important to have that, idle purge or that whatever kind of step in the tool? So really challenging what you think and what your assumptions are on what's key. And I think the other thing, and I think Dave kind of alluded to it earlier, right, at Intel, we kind of have this end of pipe solution with OC water that we put in place. But if you're just starting out, I think it's more practical and less expensive solution to really put as many kind of point of use reclaim systems in as you can. That kind of makes the technology a little less challenging for folks like Dave to figure out how we go about treating those. So getting up front of that is key, definitely.
Hey.
Yeah, all good comments. I think we all recognize Arizona is a hotbed right now, especially for the high-tech sector. And if you listen to some of the numbers out there, they're staggering relative to the needs and relative to what we expect to happen. over just the near term, let alone, the long term. So there's no shortage of challenges, whether those are regulatory challenges. We are getting into areas that regulators aren't familiar with. When we went through the Intel project, there was a lot of education that had to happen there because you're talking about technologies or treatment that maybe haven't happened before. The financial side of it, these are very large undertakings at times, operational aspects, and certainly the water resources component. And I think Kelly touched on it. Biggest advice I would have is, plan from the start, understand where you need to go. The details of the system matter. We have a tendency to think of it as end of pipe, as Kelly said. And the reality is there's a lot of efficiencies and optimization that can be gained by understanding the process itself. If you're just trying to look at what comes out the back end, you're going to miss a lot of opportunities to really come up with much better solutions along the way. So I guess my final advice would be, these are not solutions that are going to get solved in a vacuum or get solved, when we try to do this in a siloed way. It takes everyone collaborating. Again, having worked with both APS and Intel, I think one of the reasons they are as successful as they are willing to go out and really look at everything and challenge everything and bring that all back, back in house and say, okay, what can we do to be better? It is going to take all of us to be successful and to continue to support the type of growth that we're seeing in Arizona in the sector. And so,
we're gonna bring that to a close with that. Thank you for those great thoughts. We are networking, even though we can't leave the building. I'm putting my email address in there. I see some others. So thank you so much to our panelists for sharing their expertise and perspectives. Thank you to all of you who attended. AZ Tech Council and the organizers of this event, Nancy Roth and Shelley Landon of Blue Canoe Marketing and Yvonne Marshall at South 32. And Carla, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Juliet, and thank you so much for moderating today's panel. You did a fantastic job, kept us all engaged. I appreciate that. And Brad, David, and Kelly, thank you so much for sharing your subject matter expertise, your recommendations and advice of how you all are setting the tone for your companies. We at the Technology Council are very much focused on sustainability, so much so that during our signature event, the Tucson Tech and Business Expo, happening on October 6th, we will have the inaugural Sustainability Award. And so keep an eye out for that, because we are going to be celebrating and encouraging people to really start implementing sustainability practices within their organizations. Very important topic, very prevalent, something that matters and is significant to us all. So thank you all so much for attending today. To our guests, thank you. For more information about future events, please be sure to visit our website at aztechcouncil.org for all future events. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.